Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
This is the first time we are seeing this much snow.
Delays, spinouts, and crashes as BC South Coast gets hit with another blast of winter overnight.
I wanted to jump outside in the snow.
And for others, unique opportunities to have some fun. Also,
there's going to be many parents that will keep their kids at home and wait to ride this out.
Anxiety mounts for some BC parents as they await details of new back-to-school measures amid a surge in COVID cases. And
I agonized absolutely about making the decisions that we did.
a sit-down with BC's top doctor. CBC's one-on-one with Dr. Bonnie Henry on the province's ongoing plan to battle COVID-19 and why she believes 2022 may be the year the pandemic comes to an end.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Much of BC South Coast remains under a thick blanket of snow tonight after another winter storm hit the region overnight. Some residents waking up to as much as 25 centimeters of snow. As John Hernandez reports, it meant slick roads, transit delays, and a messy commute.
Partners Lovely Joseph and Rajan Matthew have lived in Vancouver for a handful of years, but today they're in awe of the weather.
We shovel and because we don't want anybody to fall here. This is the first time we are seeing this much snow.
For us, this is very new experiences, you know. In India, we don't have this kind of snow.
The heavy coat of snow came down overnight, some areas of BC's south coast seeing as much as 25 centimeters. For some, cause for celebration and playtime.
I wanted to jump outside in the snow. I wanted to go outside the minute I saw the snow.
I'd like to have been sitting by a fireplace with a nice cup of coffee, but they wanted to get outside, so.
But not so much fun on the roads.
I want to go to the North Shore, but looked out and saw how people were driving, so decided not to.
In Vancouver, slick streets meant stalled buses, forcing delays and detours on a number of transit routes. Heavier than expected snowfall meant clearing crews spent the day playing catch-up.
Just because we got more snow, it just takes us longer to clear those routes. So we do have all of our trucks out fully deployed, but just takes a bit longer for us to do the clearing.
A similar story in Surrey, where heavy snowfall was largely responsible for an overnight multi-vehicle crash that sent a child to hospital in critical condition. And with more crashes through the day, RCMP are urging people not to drive if they don't have to.
So we're asking people just to be mindful. You might not be used to driving in the snow. Your car might not be equipped for these conditions, and we certainly do have those dangerous and slick conditions out there still.
Environment Canada says the region has seen well above the monthly average of snowfall, and more could be on the way.
So likely we will see some kind of wetter snowflakes, more snow person building snowflakes to start the event, and then shift to rain throughout the day, kind of midday to maybe afternoon on Saturday. Before things warm up a little bit.
A reprieve that could be short-lived, with forecasters saying more flurries aren't out of the question come next week. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
And we'll have more weather coverage coming up, but first, we turn to delayed return to BC's classrooms. School boards are prepping for the phased start with new safety measures to be implemented. But without knowing details of a plan, some parents say they aren't sending their kids back quite yet. Our provincial affairs reporter Mira Baines has the latest.
There's a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of questions that now have to be answered at the district level.
The return to school and the rising number of COVID-19 cases has parents wondering if they should send their children to school next week or come up with ways to limit their exposure.
There's going to be many parents that will keep their kids at home and kind of wait to ride this out. One of this also parents are creative too. A lot of parents will send their kids in the morning and say, you're not having lunch at school, come back and have lunch at home or just attend school for half a day.
On Wednesday, the province announced a phased start to school. The superintendent of Surrey schools met with health officials today.
I'll be doing a video message out and then an email to all parents and all staff, and then I'm sure we'll have letters going home from all schools probably Monday of next week.
Tinney says one of the biggest concerns is preparing for possible closures due to staff shortages.
One of the main reasons is planning for the eventuality where we might have insufficient staff to run some of our schools. And so we call that a functional closure, and letting parents know what does that actually mean and what does it look like.
He says the district is in the process of planning to reopen next week for special needs children and children of essential service workers. The Vancouver School Board says it's putting enhanced safety measures in place for next week. They include encouraging mask wearing and hand hygiene, once per day cleaning of high-touch surfaces. Schools will be posting directional signage to manage traffic flow and prevent crowding. They plan to reinforce daily self-health checks and increase outdoor learning opportunities whenever possible. Tomorrow morning, provincial health officials are expected to provide another update and hopefully more answers. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
For the first time since the start of the pandemic, BC's daily case count has surpassed 4,000, skyrocketing to nearly 4,400. More than half of these new cases reported in Fraser Health. This graph shows the rolling average there blasting past the others. BC has now confirmed over 2,800 cases of the Omicron variant. Nearly half of those are in Vancouver Coastal Health. The province has also declared 6 new outbreaks in healthcare facilities, all of which are in the Fraser Health region. Victoria police are looking for the driver in a hit and run caught on video. It left a pedestrian staggering to the sidewalk, and we won't be showing you the moment of impact, but a warning, the images may still be difficult to watch. The video shows a pedestrian crossing with a light when a gray crossover hits her. The impact flips her into the air before landing on the ground. The car accelerates away against a red light, narrowly avoiding another driver, while the woman manages to make it to the other side of the road under her own power. A passing driver stops to help. It happened at the intersection of Bay and Blanchard just after 9 this morning. Anyone with information is asked to contact Victoria Police. Heavy snow, a danger, but not the only factor delaying people's commutes today. Contributing to the travel chaos, BC Ferries has canceled a number of sailings. 4 sailings between Tsawwassen and Swartz Bay have been called off because of staffing shortages. BC Ferries says it needs specific number of crew on board to meet Transport Canada's regulations. Any bookings will be canceled and reservation fees refunded. BC Ferries will have the latest updates on their website. 2 major TransLink stations were closed today and service between them disrupted for several hours after burst pipes led to flooding. Queens Quay Station and Waterfront Station were both affected, cutting off C-bus service. A so-called bus bridge over the Lions Gate replaced the boat in the interim. Service was restored in time for the evening rush hour around 4 o'clock. The cold is also threatening homeowners with frozen and burst pipes, and the impacts can be very expensive. So to fill you in on how to prevent it and what you can do if it's already happened, we've brought in Brent Watson. He's a plumber based in Kelowna with more than a little experience with frozen pipes. Brent, I'd guess most Vancouverites aren't too familiar with this problem. So let's start with, how would you know your pipes were frozen?
Well, basically, if you aren't getting hot or cold water to faucets, and if you're getting hot and cold water to multiple faucets, no water at all in the house, that's a good sign that that your water main is possibly frozen.
Yeah, and what kind of impact can that have on a property, on a house?
Well, it depends if it's burst or not. Unfortunately, a lot of times you don't know if the pipe's broken until it starts to defrost and starts to melt and drip down. So really, you're kind of in that touch and go area while it's frozen. You got to kind of do some investigating. Most of the time you need to call a plumber to go find possibly where it might be frozen.
Yeah, and what kind of things can people do to prevent it? Can they? Is there certain things that they can do?
Yeah, so now that people have experienced down in Vancouver these record low temperatures, it's best to prepare probably for the next cold snap by going to either Rona or Home Depot. These places have unit heaters, small unit heaters that you can put in areas that maybe have already froze or that you are suspecting that could be in places that maybe aren't insulated or unfinished basement that have exposed water lines. You can set up those unit heaters in there, set them to a good temperature, and just wait it out. Really, like, there's not much you can do once they are frozen, though. Basically, if you have no water to your entire house, that's usually a good sign that the main coming from the street is frozen underground. When that happens, there really is not much you can do other than keep the valve open, have some faucets open in your house, be home when this is happening, because as that would defrost slowly when the temperature outside rises, inside slowly that temperature will rise too. You'll start to see drips coming out of your faucet. Then it will start to slowly start to flow, and you want to be home for that, being that if there was to have a slow backup in your sink and you're not there to address that, as that could obviously back up and do damage in your house. So you want to be home when you do this process.
And Brent, you were telling me you're seeing 3 times the volume in calls right now. You got your dad to come out of retirement to help you guys back out in the company. What is this like for you? Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, I've been in Kelowna 31 years now, been with Vision 20 plus of those years, and I don't remember it being this cold for this long. So we're definitely seeing at least triple the volume, if not even more. I mean, we have our guys on after hours. Last night I was out till 9 o'clock. I had other guys out till 11:30 last night. That's been kind of the main for at least the last week, if not more. And we don't see that actually slowing down for another probably week or so.
So let's be patient with our local plumbers.
Absolutely.
Brent Watson is a plumber based in Kelowna. Thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Turning your backyard into a skating rink, it may be common in some parts of the country, but not in Vancouver. One family is taking advantage of the rare cold snap to hit the ice. And as Philip O'Reara tells us, it's become an opportunity to bring loved ones together.
Chris Eddy has not had this much fun since he was a teenager. Back then, he and his brothers would turn this family sports court into an ice rink. Most years, the conditions on the West Coast are far from perfect for such a storybook moment, but this year it's been optimal.
It's been about 3 or 4 times over the course of 30 years where it's gotten cold enough in Vancouver that we can build a rink, because it takes a little while. And certainly we've never had it over the Christmas holiday, so it's been pretty special.
The brothers use a garden hose to spray water on the court until it freezes, a process that's repeated until it's perfect.
Snow helps. We're pushing kind of snow out to the edges, and then we take a garden hose out of the garage and start layering one at a time. And every time you have to take the garden hose back in so it doesn't freeze. So it's probably 15 layers that we're putting on, 15 to 20, and doing it at night when it's really cold. And it slowly builds up, and we've been able to skate on the past few days.
This is the first time since 2006 Chris and his brothers have turned this sports court into a skating rink. But this year it's extra special because it means it has brought the entire family together.
Chris lives in Kelowna. Over the last 2 years, it has been difficult for all of them to get together because of COVID restrictions. Their father uses a wheelchair, and the rink has made it possible for the entire family to gather for a little outdoor fun safely. His children love it too.
My mom doesn't really know how to skate that well, so I normally play with my dad.
With temperatures set to warm up over the next few days, Chris and his family have limited time on the ice before it all melts away, and they plan to make use of it as much as they can. Philip O'Reara, CBC News, Vancouver.
That is awesome. Meteorologist Johanna Waxhaft joins us now with a look at the forecast. Joe, how's it feeling out there?
It's chilly, Isabel, but I'm inspired by young Calvin on the skates there. I actually took my 2.5-year-old skating for the first time this morning down at Robson Square. Yeah,
how'd he go? How'd he do?
I mean, my arms are exhausted. I got the workout, but he was loving it. We had a solid 10 minutes on the ice, and I feel like that was a huge win. Whatever winter sports you're hoping to get in, we've got about 24 hours to go before things change. Want to show you the warnings already in place. And by the way, 21 centimeters at YVR with that snow. That's the most snow we've seen since 2008. Check this out, though. These winter storm watches are in place for New Year's Eve to New Year's Day. So that's Friday night into Saturday morning. Tomorrow is going to be fairly quiet, cold and clear. So enjoy the snow if you are looking forward to that. But 20 to 50 centimeters, 50 is on tap from Terrace, Kitimat, Stewart, and 45 for the Sea to Sky. We'll be timing that out closely later on in the show. For now, though, the big story really is the cool temperatures, the lingering snow, and the blue skies. Most of the province tomorrow enjoying sunshine, but chilly temperatures. And tonight we'll see those minus double digits return. Extreme cold warnings in place for the Peace. But Isabel, it's a beautiful blue sky day before it all turns around. And yes, I think we've all been wondering when the end is coming, and I'll time that out a little bit later on in the show.
Awesome. We'll talk to you in a bit. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
CBC's Food Bank Day set a new record this year with over $2.7 million raised. And for folks who'd like to participate, it's still ongoing. You have until midnight tonight to add to this total. For more on how this money will benefit communities across the province, we have the Executive Director of Food Banks BC with us, Dan Huang Taylor. Thanks for joining us today, Dan.
Thanks so much for having me on today.
So, Dan, the year's total beat the previous record in 2020 by about $35,000 and counting. And a reminder that in its 35 years, CBC's Food Bank Day only started breaking $1 million in 2019. So what's your reaction to this new record, and what does this tell you about the time that we're in?
It's frankly staggering that we are breaking last year's quite extraordinary record. We never could have imagined that we would have been here again. And I mean, first of all, we're just so deeply grateful for the generosity of, we are seeing increased need for food banks. We've been hit hard this year with the ongoing need from the pandemic, but the wildfires and the floods only exacerbated that. So the importance of these funds, it can't be underestimated.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell us about who this money is helping aside from food? How are these funds used?
Well, certainly food. I mean, that is the most critical purchase for food banks. It allows the purchase of some really important products like high quality proteins, dairy, fresh produce, but also allows food banks to purchase things that might meet certain dietary restrictions for clients, cultural needs as well. But in addition to that, I would say the purchase of products and equipment that allow food banks to operate safely, so space heaters, tents, with restrictions in accessing food banks due to COVID-19, needing to make the access points more comfortable for clients is very important. So that might mean that more clients are waiting outside, and food banks want to make sure that they're feeling comfortable.
All right. How do you decide where that money goes? And is there a role to natural disasters on how the funds are allocated? I know you mentioned a few natural disasters. So does that play a role?
Well, the great thing about this campaign is that the donor can go online and select which of the 102 food banks who are part of the Food Bank BC membership, where their money is directed. There's also an option to donate to the food bank with the greatest need. And this year we have seen a notable increase in donations to some of those communities that have been more severely impacted by the floods.
Dan Huang Taylor is the Executive Director of Food Banks BC. Thanks so much for joining us. And again, you can still donate until midnight tonight.
Thank you so much for your support. We're deeply appreciative.
Daily COVID cases off the charts. What the country's top pandemic hotspots are dealing with as the world records 1 million new daily infections. And what all this could mean for Winter Olympic Games. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. An Ottawa-based company is trying to change the way households across this country dispose of food waste. Food Cycle Science uses an innovative technology that speeds up the composting process to a matter of hours and recycles your food waste without emitting any methane gas. As Robin Miller reports, the company is now piloting the project in cities across the country.
At Food Cycle headquarters in Ottawa, employees are busy at work. CEO Bradley Crepeau says the company is growing fast and the interest in food cyclers is too.
We're really aiming to offer solutions to the communities that
don't easily have access to some of the traditional organics programs that are available in more densely populated cities.
So far, about 20 Canadian municipalities signed up to provide food cyclers to residents for a reduced cost and are having them track how much waste they divert. Food cyclers are small and can easily fit on kitchen countertops. Their impact, however, much larger, reducing the weight and volume of food waste by 90% in just 4 to 8 hours.
Everybody in a small municipality has the same problem, which is a lot of waste and not so much landfill space left, and we're coming to them with a solution.
Officials in Nelson, British Columbia liked the solution so much they have plans for a pre-treatment program that will include every household.
One of the reasons why this model for diverting organic waste is so attractive to our residents is because the soil amendment that comes out of the pre-treatment process is actually sterile and odorless. So it doesn't attract pest and wildlife, which for our community is a really big concern.
South Glengarry just wrapped up its pilot project, a township where landfills are either at or going to reach capacity within the next 13 years.
Small municipalities simply don't have the funds to continue to close landfills and open and or expand landfills. So we have to look at other options, and this is one small piece of the puzzle.
Right now, Food Cycle is targeting small, rural, and Indigenous communities, but hopes to one day be part of the solution in larger cities as well. Robin Miller, CBC News, Ottawa.
Welcome back. Just a quick note, we mentioned that the deadline for the CBC Food Bank Day is tonight at midnight. It's actually tomorrow at midnight, so you have an extra 24 hours to donate and have that amount accumulated and total to the CBC Food Bank Day amount. COVID case records are being surpassed across the country. And as cases surge, so does the number of people in isolation. And that is leading to a whole other pandemic concern: staff shortages. Marina von Stagelberg with how some provinces are changing the rules to try to tackle it.
Corey Arsenault expects more of his employees to start calling in sick.
All it takes is for one person in here all of a sudden to be a close contact, and that just, the dominoes keep on dropping.
Concerned workplaces will be debilitated by exposures. PEI is changing its public health orders. If there's an outbreak at an essential workplace, employees who are close contacts can stay on the job if they test negative.
When they are not at work, they are to be in isolation. This policy is not without risk and will be used sparingly.
Staffing issues are cropping up all over the place. WestJet has canceled 15% of its flights next month, saying many employees are out sick. In Manitoba, more than 400 healthcare workers have been infected in the last week. Winnipeg's health authority has asked employees with COVID symptoms who test negative to come to work.
We see that as a way of supporting the healthcare system in a safe way.
Nova Scotia is asking for volunteers to start giving boosters to everyone 30 and up.
We need some help. We need more people. So if you're a retired nurse or doctor and are able to fill shifts vaccinating Nova Scotians, please put your hand up.
In Saskatchewan, as Omicron spreads, isolation rules are changing.
We're going to have more people that are self-isolating, and ultimately that's going to have an impact on the services that we need to continue to offer, not only in our healthcare system, but also in our communities.
So people who test positive but are vaccinated and don't have symptoms only have to isolate for 5 days, not 10. Some worry all these changing measures could spell trouble.
There's no simple way to manage this, but honestly, with Omicron, it's inevitable that there will be outbreaks, large outbreaks that will occur.
Dr. Alex Wong says Omicron is quickly becoming a dangerous balancing act to stop the virus's rapid spread while keeping society afloat. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Toronto.
COVID cases are rising rapidly in Quebec. That province set a new record today, reporting more than 14,000 new cases. And hospitalizations there are projected to exceed capacity in a matter of weeks, prompting the government to announce new restrictions tonight. Starting tomorrow afternoon, the following measures will take effect. A curfew between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. Restaurants will be closed for dining. Schools will stay closed until January 17th. Non-essential businesses will shut down on Sundays, and indoor gatherings involving more than one household bubble are prohibited. There is no end date for the restrictions. We're less than 6 weeks away from the Winter Olympics in Beijing, and the sports world is getting ready for another pandemic games, this time as Renee Filipponi shows us under the shadow of Omicron.
Rehearsals in Beijing are underway to ensure everything runs smoothly, pushing ahead with the games despite growing concerns about COVID.
There's just a lot of mayhem right now in the sports world, and it's certainly affecting what's happening as we move closer to Beijing.
The Bobsleigh World Cup in Latvia is a major Olympic qualifying event, but some Canadian racers have had to pull out over a COVID outbreak. A number of key curling qualifiers have also been cancelled, leaving Canadian Olympic hopeful Chelsea Carey tweeting that it's perhaps time to consider postponing the Olympics. The International Olympic Committee needs to make that call, and critics say it's unlikely they will.
Olympic honchos, those who run the Olympics, are perfectly willing to gamble with public health in order to make the Olympics happen.
Events at this summer's Tokyo Olympics went mostly undisrupted by COVID, though hundreds of cases were connected to the Games. Of course, that was before the Omicron variant.
We're in the middle of a surge in cases globally due to this really highly virulent Omicron variant. So I think there are risks to large events like this, and they're well established.
In a statement, the Canadian Olympic Committee says it's monitoring the impact of the Omicron variant closely and have added safety measures, including mandating vaccinations, chartering flights, and increasing testing. U.S. star skier Michaela Schriffen pulled out of the World Cup this week after testing positive. Athletes in her position are now worried about the PCR testing they will need to get before the Games.
Athletes who have cleared infections and who have gotten COVID, weeks before the Olympics, who have recovered, who aren't capable of spreading the disease anymore, can still be testing positive on PCR tests.
And with just 36 days till these Olympics, there are still many unknowns as this latest wave of COVID ripples around the world. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
To add yet another damper on people's travel plans, WestJet is removing 15% of its flights because of staff shortages. That's a cancellation of about 70 flights through to the end of January. The airline says they've seen a 35% rise in COVID cases among staff, confirming 181 have tested positive. Affected customers will be notified, and if you're planning to take a cruise south of the border, you're out of luck too. U.S. experts advising people to avoid boarding cruise ships altogether after 85 are being infected for exposure. It's been a year of reckoning for big tech. Explosive testimony by an insider casts serious doubt over the motives of big social media platforms. Government committees in the U.S. grilled the CEOs of the biggest tech giants. And as Chris Reyes reports, a flood of new rules and regulations are up for debate around the world.
Big tech today represents the greatest accumulation of power
market power and monopoly power over information that the world has ever seen.
That power and pull of technology in our lives on full display on a sunny day in a New York City park.
Do you feel like the social media platforms have too much of a hold on your attention?
Yeah, for sure. U.S. lawmakers believe that's not the only problem. This year, politicians on both sides of the aisle tabled a long list of bills that would rein in big tech's power when it comes to data, privacy, content, and competition.
They're not subject to the responsibilities of government, but they have huge power, and they're bigger than most countries.
One area of focus for U.S. lawmakers and the Biden administration, stronger antitrust laws, including ones that would make it harder for big tech companies to buy up their competition, the way Facebook bought WhatsApp and Instagram.
Capitalism without competition, it's exploitation.
There's also renewed scrutiny on the impact of social media on society.
How is it possible for you not to at least admit that Facebook played a central role?
In March, Congress grilled CEOs of Facebook, Twitter, and Google about the January 6 Capitol riots. Their platforms taking heat for allowing the spread of misinformation that led to the attack. Then in October, an explosive testimony from Facebook employee turned whistleblower Frances Haugen.
I believe that Facebook's products harm children, stoke division in our communities, threaten our democracy.
Facebook defended its position, but also quickly shifted its focus to a surprise name change, Meta, and a new mission to focus on its metaverse platform. Not the kind of change that advocates were looking for.
I think legislation is an essential piece of the safety puzzle here. So if we don't see legislation, more people are going to be harmed.
As it stands, Democrats and Republicans have different views on what the rules should be. Tech companies and advocates have their own ideas. The only consensus seems to be this.
The time for self-regulation is over.
Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Data never tells you what to do. It always has to be put in the context of judgments and values and preferences.
And Dr. Bonnie Henry tells us making sense of all that pandemic data is her job. When we come back, a sit-down interview with BC's top doctor and how she's come to accept that change is the only thing that's constant about COVID.
One of the most familiar ways for businesses to reach the buying public is taking a new and a colorful twist. The Yellow Pages are getting some competition from a newcomer to the world of advertising, the Pink Pages. For now, the battle's confined to Vancouver, but the founders of Pink Pages want people to think pink in dozens of other cities too. Keith Bogue reports.
This is the first strike in an attack on a North American institution. A head-on challenge to those walking fingers, the Yellow Pages, which have been around for nearly 60 years. Pink Pages. So far, more than 600,000 books, full of them, in Vancouver.
If you haven't received your book...
It's a young company in more ways than one.
Some of the things that you won't find in the Yellow Pages.
The firm's executive vice president is just 26 years old, but already he has visions of his Pink Pages spreading to cities across North America.
There you go. It's a trendy color. It's
better than yellow?
Oh, definitely. I sometimes wonder why yellow. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense having gone through this exercise.
So if we just do the same thing, put a space there.
What Pink Pages is offering is a cheaper rate for business listings. They admit those listings aren't as thorough as the Yellow Pages, that they make more mistakes. But they offer rates as much as 85% lower than the competition's, and they've sold enough ads to fill 800 pages.
Tuesday at 10 o'clock.
This is the home of the Yellow Pages in British Columbia, Dominion Directory. They've had competitors before, but nothing quite on the scale of the Pink Pages.
Let's not forget, there have been other directories that have come and gone.
The official word here is that Pink Pages is a welcome competitor, not a threat.
I really don't think we can compare Pink Pages to Yellow Pages. It'd be like comparing mineral water to Coca-Cola. But if you want to draw analogies, look at the quality of the product. And there's no question that I think one is superior to the other.
But what the company won't comment on are the lawsuits begun against the newcomers. The Yellow Pages is suing the Pink Pages for everything from copyright infringement to copying its own ads. It even tried to get a court injunction to prevent the Pink Pages from hitting the streets.
certainly opposing our trademark and issuing a suit against us were not the most comfortable things to be dealing with as a young company. But we've been able to deal with those things, we believe, and move on to the more positive aspect of competition.
Meanwhile, in the marketplace, Yellow Pages may be the first publisher ever to encourage customers to judge its book by its cover. Keith Folk, CBC News, Vancouver.
Welcome back. With staggering numbers of COVID-19 cases emerging every day, it's not where most British Columbians expected to be at this point in the pandemic. For that matter, neither did health officials. At the start of the year, things were looking up, but it didn't last. Now, despite the surge of Omicron, BC's top doctor feels 2022 will be better. Dr. Bonnie Henry sat down with the CBC's Belle Puri for a look back at the second year of the COVID-19 pandemic.
You know, at the beginning of the year, there was lots of optimism. There was the newly launched vaccine program, a possible beginning of the end, if you will, of the pandemic. So how surprised are you now that we're at the end of 2021 and we're in the middle of a fifth wave?
It was not totally unexpected, but I was hoping it wouldn't have happened. There were several things that could have happened. And the most optimistic, and you know, my bias is optimism, it was that the vaccine would have that dramatic effect, which we saw, of rapidly decreasing cases and, you know, really the stopping of the outbreaks in long-term care was just so heartening to see. That was the part where, you know, I really, really felt that made such a difference. And then as we got into summer, we really did have data that was supporting that we were in a better place. But of course, we can't be complacent. And it was, you know, Delta was something that took us, made us shift again, and we had to change to adapt to the fact that the virus had changed.
And I guess that's part of it, you know, because if you look back in March, the Premier was pretty confident that BC was on the right track, and then restrictions were loosened a bit, but then not long after that, they were tightened again. And then for a while we were okay, you don't have to wear your mask in public, but then we were back to wear your mask in public. And I guess, you know, in just this month, in the last few weeks, we've seen a set of restrictions on a Friday and then another set of restrictions on a Monday. How much of this is perhaps you being too optimistic, to use your word, at some points in the year?
Really, about the Omicron, it is something that has moved unexpectedly fast for all of us. And I agonized absolutely about making the decisions that we did on the Friday, and then spent that entire weekend agonizing more and realizing that it really was, I had to check my optimism bias, that we couldn't rely on the fact that what we were seeing in South Africa gave some indication it was milder, maybe less people in hospital, you know, looking at our vaccination rates. And but if we were wrong, the downside impact on our healthcare system would mean that it would affect everybody in the community. So it was a very difficult decision, but I felt we needed to overreact rather than underreact at that time.
You know, were there times where you suspected something? You know, it may be instinct, it may be your experience, maybe it was just a gut feeling, but you held back because the scientific proof wasn't there, only to see that what you suspected would happen actually did happen.
Especially early on, I really had a sense that this was going to be quite dramatic, and I call it my post-SARS traumatic stress. But it comes up again and again. And yes, in the summer, I really wanted us to be quite cautious. And when the science was really pointing in the direction that we could loosen things more rapidly. And there was a lot of pressure to do that. So it is trying to find that balance, trying to find a balance of not disrupting people's lives and recognizing that the measures that we took disrupt people. Not everybody experiences it the same way, and particularly we know that younger people, they lost a lot of opportunities, they lost a lot of social connections, economic connections that will affect them for the rest of their lives. So there's always very challenging to make those decisions. And I've said a lot, and I talk to my scientific and academic colleagues in particular, that data never tells you what to do. It always has to be put in the context of judgments and values and preferences. And that's where my job is to take the data and the scientific pieces and put them in the context of who's going to be affected and those really important discussions with our elected leaders, because some of those tough decisions need to be made by the people who are elected to make them.
Let's talk about those decisions and that decision-making process. Who's at the table with you when you deal with these pandemic-related decisions? Who gives you advice?
Well, there's a lot of people at the table. I meet regularly with, we call it our Public Health Leadership Committee. So it's the chief MHOs from each of the health authorities here in BC, First Nations Health Authority, my deputies from my office. We have academics who are advising us around specific issues. The BC CDC plays a really large part in pulling together the scientific information that helps us make those decisions. So that's one level. There's also the table that I sit at with the Deputy Minister and the CEOs of the health authorities and our IMSS-BC team. And we make decisions more on an operational logistics side of things. And of course, I meet regularly with the deputy ministers from all the affected ministries and with the ministers from many different portfolios.
That's probably been one of the hallmarks of the BC pandemic, this perceived separation between public health and politics. So now we're 2 years into the game. How much do you feel you still have agency to make decisions without political interference?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever felt political interference, which is good. And I have tremendous respect for our elected officials. They have an incredibly important role, and my role is to provide the best advice possible and to try and find that balance. And I've been very thankful for the relationship that we have here in BC, where I do find that my advice is taken very seriously, and they have let me be the lead around making those decisions together that are important.
Now, early on in the pandemic, the popular thought was certainly that BC was doing a really good job in managing the pandemic. This year, that sentiment has changed over the months. There seems to be a rising sense of frustration, even some anger in many people, and some of it may be aimed directly at you, coming from both sides of the spectrum, right? Some people want you to be tougher, some people want you to loosen up. Why do you think there is this criticism now about BC's management of the pandemic?
I think there's been criticism all along, and I have said from the very beginning that we wait for the recriminations and the class action lawsuits and the public inquiries before we start celebrating anything. We've always had to change, and every time we make a change, there's always people who feel that they've been disadvantaged or advantaged, or we've gone too far or not enough. And I accept that. These are all very difficult decisions to make. I think the thing that has surprised me, but also something that started very early on, was the personal vitriol. Every time I make a decision, every time we do something, there is an increase in in that narrative and in threats. And I think some of it is misunderstanding, some of it is things that are misreported or misrepresented, and pieces of things get taken by certain groups and expounded upon. Some of it is, I try and just let it go. But I also really have a strong sense that we're making rational decisions with the best information that we have. It's not perfect information, and what we need to be able to do is adjust as more information becomes available. So those are the things that we try and do. I don't think we're doing any better or worse than we have from the very beginning. We've been dealing with all of the situations as they arise, some of them unpredictable.
You often remind us that BC is in its own pandemic. But why is it that BC at the same time seems like an outlier compared to other provinces? Like the rapid tests, for instance, that's one example. Looking at what goes on in other provinces is often frustrating for British Columbians.
There's levels of decision-making and discussion around some of these things. Rapid tests are a perfect example, where we are now seeing that we are able to use the rapid test to supplement for those who need it, who actually need a test right now, whereas many other provinces took a different approach, and now they're only available to those who have the agency to find them. So it is an approach that sometimes decisions are made at different levels in different provinces. I stand by the decisions that we've made here. I've been criticized for many of the decisions, things like expanding the interval, using mix and match vaccines. I mean, there are many, many things that have proven to be the right decisions in time. But these are all things, it's about making the best decision with the information that we have about what's happening here right now.
2022, will it be the year the pandemic ends?
Yeah, one doesn't like to predict, but I do think it will be the year the pandemic ends. I think we'll still be living with COVID, but we'll be living with COVID in an endemic way and have adapted to it. We'll no longer be in that global pandemic that we're in now.
At 6:45, a live look at Georgia Street in downtown Vancouver, just outside our CBC studio. Looking chilly, and after all of that snow fell last night, sunshine for much of the lower mainland today. Will we see more of it, or will we have more of those flakes come back for the last day of the year? Johanna Wagstaff joins us next with the full weather forecast.
Cremona, the small town nestled in the Po Valley of northern Italy, where 500 years ago craftsman Nicola Amati created the first violin, and where a century and a half later, Antonio Stradivari took the craft to its highest level, a name still synonymous with violin masterpiece. Today, Canadian violin maker Bernard Newman continues that tradition, using the very same techniques to restore the old masterpieces and carve new ones for the world's top violinists.
It starts off as a block of wood.
With the help of a Canada Council grant, Newman began training as a luthier some 40 years ago in Cremona and stayed.
From start to finish, it takes about 150 hours.
Meticulously carving to achieve the rich sound of the old masters.
To this day, Cremona lives and breathes stringed instruments. You can't turn a corner here without hearing a snippet of violin music rise from a window.
Much of that music coming from Cremona's Stauffer Center for Strings. This fall, it launched the world's first international program for promising young violinists and orchestras, a way to draw top talent to the birthplace of the instrument. American Hannah Cho says being in Cremona has been inspiring.
To come here and feel a sense of camaraderie and just great personalities, it's really nice to feel like I belong in a little community here.
another Stauffer student, Italian Sofia Manvati, gets the rare opportunity to play on a carefully guarded Stradivarius worth millions, selected from the collection of Cremona's Violin Museum.
If you want to do something on these instruments, it's like immediately you can do it, and it's amazing.
As for Newman, he says the entire town and the instruments it's given birth to have been inspiring.
Once you've experienced what Amati or a Guarneri or a Stradivari or what a Nini can do in how it produces the sound, then you try and work that into your own violin making.
A Canadian and his violins richer for the experience. Megan Williams, CBC News, Cremona.
Meteorologist Johanna Waxav joins us now again. What's going on with the forecast? Can we expect any more snow, any more sunshine?
Basically, you want me to tell you the forecast all the way through to next year?
Yes,
I'm
please.
guessing.
If you can do that. I know it's a big,
I can
big
do that.
task. Yes.
Yeah, I was definitely not going to not make that joke. I've got you through to 2022, and we do have some more snow to get through as well. Let me start off with what the snow is doing right now. Look at the snow on the ground across the country as seen from space. Now, obviously, those purples, that's our mountain ranges. But right now, Vancouver has more snow on the ground than Edmonton, Regina, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Halifax, and St. John's. We are taking the cake for snow right now, and we get to see it stick on the ground through a cold Friday and with more accumulating snow on Saturday before changing over to rain and warming up on Sunday. I want to show you the big picture as far as that Arctic air mass in purple. Right now, we are just on the boundary of that. So it's a cold night tonight, cold again tomorrow. And then look at this Saturday into Sunday, bit of a warm up before cool air descends Monday, Tuesday. And then notice it sort of fluctuates. We're right on that boundary between the Arctic air and seasonal air through most of next week. We're going to be flip-flopping. We'll see a few rain events, battling between overnight snow events, not nearly as cold next week as the previous week, but definitely below seasonal and flirting with zero for the next few days. This system is going to be the game changer, sliding down the coast. This is the one bringing 50 centimeters to northern coastal sections tomorrow night. Big snow for the sea to sky. So Saturday is definitely a snow event for us. It's Saturday overnight as temperatures warm up. We'll see that messy mix that may include some freezing rain. Again, Sunday morning is going to be pretty messy out there on the roads. Look at the temperatures across the province tomorrow, though. Cold, this is without a wind chill factor, but clear. We're really just seeing that snow sneak into central and northern coastal sections tomorrow. So quite the change up. -3 is your high in blue skies. Changing over Saturday night into Sunday. And then, Isabel, we get a warm-ish week ahead. We'll have to take it day by day. There's a lot going on in 2022.
I'll take warm-ish. I'll take it.
Yeah. I love a good ish on a forecast.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
As we get ready to ring out the year, a look back at 2021, the 12 months that challenged British Columbians. A few that delighted us. We'll bring you some of the best images from our CBC News photographers. Stay with us.
As soon as lockdown started, I thought I would make a bucket list of what to do after COVID.
Ladies waving from the dock. One of the first things on that bucket list for theater buff Maria Papadopoulos was to finally see the production of Come From Away.
So as soon as tickets opened up again on November 15th, I think it was, I purchased my ticket for today, and that was before Omicron hit.
The show has been canceled, not indefinitely either, permanently.
We looked at everything and we said, you know, it costs so much money to restart the show, and we're not going to make any of it back. And we may not even make back the costs of running the show weekly.
Venues like the Royal Alexandra Theatre need to operate at 75 to 80% capacity just to break even. And unlike other industries, commercial theatre companies don't qualify for wage subsidies. That's because cast and crew are mostly independent contractors, not employees of the theatre. Mirvish Production says the industry badly needs a safety net.
Every commercial theater production in the United States was given $10 million. The federal government of the United States realizes that commercial theater is an important sector of the economy.
The Tourism and Culture Minister's office says theatres are eligible for the Ontario Tourism Recovery Benefit, but that money won't come until sometime in the new year, and that's hard to plan shows around.
It's unusual probably to hear the union leader talk about the problems for the bosses, but I have profound empathy for the theatres in this country who don't know whether or not they can go forward with a production.
You're looking at months of preparation, weeks of rehearsals, not to mention the cost of sets, storing them, refurbishing them, costumes, and operating costs.
All of those costs are up front. And there's no guarantee, of course, that audiences are going to come.
Come From Away won't have an encore, but as soon as things do stabilize, there's one person theaters can count on being in the audience.
Yeah, it is very important that we keep the arts alive, especially during this time.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Governor General Mary Simon is sharing her New Year's good wishes. She released a video message reflecting on the last 12 months and the challenges they've presented. An address she delivered in English, French, and Inuktitut. Here's some of what she had to say.
In Inuktitut, there is a concept called ayuynata. Although it means commitment, a promise, a vow, it's also so much more. We find meaning in its action. Together, we are combating the COVID-19 pandemic with vaccinations and public health measures. Together, we are thinking of creative and innovative solutions to save our planet. Together, we are walking the path of reconciliation on a lifelong journey of healing, respect, and understanding. With every hard question we ask, we find answers to how we can make Canada a truly inclusive and sustainable country.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC News at 6. Before we go tonight, a look back on the year, from the blazing heat dome to the discovery of unmarked graves in Kamloops to historic flooding. British Columbians have been through a lot this year, and our photojournalists Ben Nelms and Maggie McPherson were on the ground capturing all those moments. Here's a look back at some of 2021's top photos.